Thank you for joining us for this Form I-956 overview. I will go through the presentation today, reading the information on the slides and adding some additional information. Let's start with some of the preliminary general matters that pertain to the Form I-956. As you all are aware, the Form I-956 is a USCIS form that was newly created following enactment of the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, the RIA, and was first published on May 13, 2022. The goal today is to provide guidance on this form. Please note that throughout the presentation, we may say form instead of I-956. When we say form, we refer to Form I-956. If any other form is mentioned, the form number and name will be provided. It is recommended that you have a copy of the Form I-956 and I-956 instructions available to reference during this presentation. The information shared in this presentation is intended solely for purposes of illustration and does not create or supersede agency policy with respect to the I-956 form instructions, or applicable statutes. Please consult these and other USCIS sources for additional information. The Form I-956 is the application for Regional Center designation. Applicants use the Form I-956 to request USCIS designation as a regional center under the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, Section 203(b)(5)(e), on the basis of a proposal for the promotion of economic growth, including prospective job creation and increased domestic capital investment. I-956 also is used to request an amendment to an approved regional center designated under INA 203(b)(5)(e). In contrast to the previous Form I-924, Application for Regional Center Designation under the Immigrant Investor Program, the new Form I-956 does not allow a regional center to add a new commercial enterprise associated with the regional center or request approval for an exemplar project. The form instructions clarify that legible photocopies should be submitted. The instructions also state that if the regional center submits original documents that are not required and have not been requested by USCIS, those original documents may be destroyed upon receipt. You may notice that the instructions do not specifically require that the regional center submit any original documents along with the form. Therefore, in the context of the I-956, do not send original documents unless USCIS specifically requests them. If USCIS specifically requires original documents, we will return them to you after the adjudication process is complete. The information USCIS collects on the form is required by the RIA. USCIS will use the information provided to determine the regional center's eligibility for regional center designation. USCIS may conduct standard background checks with law enforcement, which may uncover derogatory information that may result in the denial of an application or termination of the regional center's designation. Now let's discuss the different parts of the form itself. Part 1 of the form requires applicants to select the type of application being submitted. While not a new requirement, the application type question was asked in Part 3 of the previous I-924 form. One of the biggest differences between the I-924 and the I-956 is that the I-956 is only for requesting initial designation as a regional center and amending an approved regional center's designation. Unlike the previous I-924, Form I-956 does not allow for a regional center to add a new commercial enterprise associated with the regional center or request approval for an exemplar project. In fact, USCIS has removed all references to hypothetical, actual, and exemplar projects. All regional center project requests must be submitted to USCIS on the Form I-956F, Application for Approval of an Investment in a Commercial Enterprise. We will discuss the Form I-956F in more detail in another presentation. Applicants requesting initial designation as a regional center should select the first box. If the regional center is already designated and is using the form to request an amendment to its designation, please select the second box. Regional centers submitting an amendment need to provide their Regional Center Identification Number. The Regional Center Identification Number, or RCID, is a unique 10-digit number that corresponds to the original receipt number for the regional center's initial I-956 application. In those cases, the RCID is the same as the receipt number, just switching the INF prefix for RC. Regional centers can find this RCID on the receipt notice mailed at the time of the initial designation request, and may also find it on the regional center's initial approval notice. Check your approval notices and look out for correspondence in the future to see if you have been assigned a new RCID. Regional centers are also required to select all of the reasons for filing an amendment. The form lists the 5 circumstances in which a regional center must file an amendment. The form specifically asks for the legal name of the regional center entity as written on the entity's certificate of organization or certificate of incorporation. The form also asks for any other name used or doing business as names. This information highlights any potential difference between the name the regional center will be doing business as and the legal name of the underlying entity. The following questions are carried over from the I-924, but have now been combined into Part 2, Information about the Regional Center. The applicant should select the appropriate organizational structure, provide the date the regional center was established, the state in which the regional center was established, and all other states where the regional center is authorized to operate. The form also asks for Federal Employer Identification Number for the regional center. The regional center must provide the complete and accurate mailing address where it can receive correspondence from USCIS. If the regional center's physical address is the same as the mailing address, select the box indicating so. If the physical address is different, the regional center must provide the mailing address in this Part 2 and the physical address in Part 12 additional information. The regional center should provide any other ways they can be contacted. Whereas the I-924 asked for the email and website address if the regional center had one, USCIS now assumes that most, if not all, regional centers have an email address and a website. USCIS is especially interested in any email addresses so that USCIS may contact the regional center via email about its case. USCIS may contact the regional center via email to ask a filing question, or to issue a request for information or a request for clarification. The regional center has the option to reply to a request for clarification by requesting that USCIS issue a formal request for evidence instead. Finally, in this section, provide any other address that the regional center uses in addition to the mailing address and physical address covered above. The prior Form I-924 asked if the geographic area of the regional center being requested was limited and contiguous. Regional centers should still ensure that the geographic area being requested constitutes a defined, contiguous, and limited geographic area. The I-956 form requires regional centers to list directly on the form the states, counties, and/or census tracts being requested. Regional centers should not simply write "See attached evidence" or something similar on the form. If the regional center cannot fit all the components in Part 3, it should use Part 12, Additional Information, to provide the remaining components. Like the former I-924, regional centers may also provide a listing of the geographic area, as well as a map or illustration elsewhere in the file, such as an operational plan. If filing an amendment to expand the geographic area of the regional centers must include a description of both the currently approved geographic area and the new areas being requested. Regional centers must demonstrate that the pooled investment will have a substantive economic impact on the proposed geographic area. In the past, Regional centers could provide this information in the supporting evidence submitted with the I-924, such as in an operational plan. However, the I-956 requires regional centers to provide certain information, such as the forecasting tools to be used, types of new commercial enterprises to receive EB-5 capital, and the types of jobs that will be created from such investment, directly on the form. It is no longer sufficient for regional centers to simply say, "See attached evidence" in these text fields. Regional centers can further elaborate on and provide more in-depth answers to these questions in the supporting evidence submitted, such as an operational plan, business plan, or economic analysis explaining how the regional center's actions will have a substantive economic impact on the geographic area being requested. The next three parts of the I-956 did not previously appear on the Form I-924. First, Part 5 requires regional centers to describe the policies and procedures in place, reasonably designed to monitor new commercial enterprises and any associated job-creating entity to seek to ensure compliance with all applicable laws, regulations, and executive orders of the United States, including immigration, criminal, and securities laws, as well as all securities laws of the state where any securities offerings will be conducted, investment advice will be given, or the offerors or offerees reside. If regional centers prefer to explain these policies in their supporting evidence, such as an operational plan or administrative plan, they are free to do so. If so, regional centers should select the appropriate box indicating that they are submitting documentation describing these policies. They should also clearly describe the type of documentation being submitted and where it can be found in the file by providing the exhibit number and the name or title of the document where their policies are explained. If the regional center is not providing separate documentation describing these policies, the regional center must describe these policies directly on the I-956 form in the text box provided. If more space is needed than the text box provides, regional centers should use Part 12, Additional Information. Regional centers must describe the policies and procedures in place that are reasonably designed to ensure program compliance. Like Part 5, regional centers may submit documentation describing these policies and select the appropriate box indicating they are doing so. Regional centers should also clearly describe the type of documentation they are submitting and where it can be found in the file by providing the exhibit number and the name or title of the document. If no documentation is being submitted, regional centers must describe these policies in the box provided on the I-956 form, using Part 12, Additional Information, if more space is necessary. This is an important change from the prior Form I-924. The I-924 required regional centers to identify the owners and principal non-owners of the regional center and provide the biographical and contact information for both. Some of the information previously collected on the Form I-924 has been moved to the new Form I-956H, bona fides of persons involved with the Regional Center program. USCIS will cover the new Form I-956H in another overview. The I-956 requires regional centers to identify all natural persons, meaning individuals, involved with the regional center, which now extends beyond simply the owners and principals. Please refer to INA 203B5H5 or the I-956 form and the instructions for an explanation about which persons are considered to be involved with the regional center. Regional centers must list directly on the I-956 form the full names of all individuals under the appropriate role in the regional center. For example, are they the owner, an executive, a member of the board of directors? If the same person is involved in multiple roles in the regional center, their name must be listed under each appropriate role. For example, if someone is the owner of the regional center and also its chief executive officer, that individual's full name should be listed twice, once under Item 2 and again under Item 4. For individuals involved with the regional center indirectly through their position or other interest in a legal entity, the organizational structure of their involvement should be described as appropriate. For example, if the regional center is owned and managed by a separate LLC, and an individual is the owner and manager of that separate LLC, the LLC's ownership of the regional center and the individual's ownership and position as manager of the LLC should be described in the appropriate field on the form. If additional space is necessary, Part 12, Additional Information, can be used. While only individuals are listed on the I-956, all persons, including individuals and organizations, involved with the regional center must submit a Form I-956H with the Form I-956. Based upon the individuals listed in this section as well as other persons, meaning organizations, required to submit a Form I-956H with the Form I-956, provide the total number of unique I-956Hs that are being submitted along with the I-956. Note that while an individual may be listed 2 or more times under different categories on the I-956, such as owner and manager, they will only need to submit one I-956H. Regional centers should gather all I-956Hs from all persons involved with the regional center before filing the I-956, and submit the I-956 and I-956H supplements at the same time. This helps USCIS bundle the I-956 with the associated I-956Hs and will help facilitate the adjudications process. The form requires the signature of a qualified certifier. A qualified certifier is a person in a position of substantive authority for the management or operations of the regional center, such as a principal executive officer or principal financial officer, with knowledge of the regional center entity's policies and procedures related to compliance with applicable requirements. The I-956 also requires the qualified certifier's identifying information and contact information in case USCIS needs to communicate with the individual. By signing the form, the qualified certifier swears under penalty of perjury that, to the best of their knowledge after due diligence investigation, the regional center is in compliance with and has policies and procedures, including those related to internal and external due diligence, reasonably designed to confirm that the regional center and all parties associated with the regional center are and will remain in compliance with U.S. securities laws and the securities laws of any state in which the regional center conducts the offer, purchase, or sale of securities, in which the issuer of securities is located, or in which the regional center or any parties associated with the regional center provided investment advice. Like the prior Form I-924, the Form I-956 requires the signature of an authorized individual who has been granted the authority to file the form on behalf of the regional center. The I-956 requires the authorized individual's identifying information in Part 9. The authorized individual may or may not be the same individual acting as the qualified certifier identified in Part 8. If the individual is the same, the individual must still provide their identifying information and contact information in both sections. If the authorized individual does not understand English and had an interpreter assist in the reading of questions and the filling out of the form, select the appropriate box and provide the interpreter's name. The interpreter must then complete Part 10. If the authorized individual is not filling out the form themselves, then the authorized individual must select the appropriate box and provide the name of the preparer who prepared the application. The preparer may be an attorney for the regional center. The preparer must then complete Part 11. If the same person was the interpreter and preparer, that person should complete both Parts 10 and 11. Please note that even if a different individual prepared the form, it is still the authorized individual's responsibility to declare, under penalty of perjury, that all information contained in the form is complete, true, and correct, and that they are authorized to file on behalf of the organization. The authorized individual must also declare, among other things, that they recognize USCIS authority to conduct audits using publicly available information, and recognize that USCIS may verify information through any means determined appropriate by USCIS, including, but not limited to, on-site visits. If the authorized individual used an interpreter to read and/or fill out any portion of the I-956, The interpreter must provide information including name, mailing address, and other contact information where the interpreter may be contacted. The interpreter must also provide the business or organization the interpreter works for, if any. The interpreter must certify that the interpreter is fluent in English, that the interpreter read all questions to the authorized individual, and that the authorized individual understood all questions and instructions on the I-956 and verified the accuracy of every answer. As stated above, if any individual other than the authorized individual mentioned in Part 8 prepared and completed the I-956 on behalf of the Regional Center, the preparer must complete Part 11, including the preparer's identification and contact information. This information also includes the preparer's name, mailing address, and any other contact information. The preparer must also provide the business or organization the preparer works for, if any. The preparer must indicate whether they are an attorney or accredited representative, certify that they prepared the form at the request of the authorized individual, and certify that the authorized individual reviewed the form and that all the information provided on the application is complete, true, and correct. As you can see, Parts 8 through Part 11 of the I-956 require individual signatures. Each application must be properly signed and filed. Please note that it is not acceptable to use a stamped signature or typewritten name in place of the certifier, authorized individual's, interpreter's, or preparer's signature. This includes electronic signatures. USCIS will not accept signatures created by AutoPens or similar devices. Any unsigned application will be rejected. If we accept the application but then determine the signature is deficient, we will deny the application. However, USCIS will consider a photocopied, faxed, or scanned copy of the original handwritten signature valid for filing purposes. The photocopy, fax, or scan must be of the original document containing the handwritten ink signature. Like the previous I-924 and many other USCIS forms, the Form I-956 features this robust and flexible section for applicants to provide additional information. As noted earlier, many regional centers will need to use this part to provide additional details for various parts of the form. Make sure that the additional information you include in Part 12 is accurate and consistent with the other data on the form, as well as the supporting evidence submitted with the form. If more space is needed, regional centers can make as many copies of Part 12 as needed to provide additional information and file with their application. Regional centers should provide their regional center name and regional center identification at the top of each Part 12 they submit. You must mail the completed application, supporting documentation, and the correct filing fee to the appropriate address. Applicants should check the USCIS website for the most current mailing address. As stated above, regional centers should gather all required I-956Hs and submit at the same time as the I-956. This will help USCIS bundle all the files together and will help expedite the adjudications process. Please note, if you send your Form I-956 and I-956Hs to IPO in Washington, D.C., we will reject it. Please review the Form I-956H instructions for more information. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time.